Big band arranging may seem incredibly daunting at first, but the longer you really look at it, the more you start to notice that there's really just a bunch of different little tools that each composer keeps in their toolbox. And one of the most iconic is the Soli. Simply defined, a Soli is a group solo. It's a moment for you to feature a section, which is typically the saxophones, and have their own moment outside of the rest of the ensemble. Now, solis may seem really complicated to write, but it's actually way easier than you think when you break it down. All you really need to know is a few very simple composing techniques. Let's go over a couple now. The first arrangement technique that we're going to talk about is called close four voicing. This one is pretty simple and it's probably what you think about when you think about arranging in general. The name has two components, close and four. Close implies that all of the voices occur in just the span of one octave, and four are the amount of voices. So we have four voices that all span no more than one octave. Pretty simple concept. Now, of course, this can be amended for any number of voices. In a typical jazz band, most sections have 4 or 5 voices, so you can either have close 4, maybe a close 5. Let's say we have a C7 chord. Simply put, a close 4 voicing would be C, E, G, B flat. And all of this happens within an octave. So this would be a closed 4 voicing. That's it. Our next technique that we're going to talk about is called drop 2 voicing. This one's a little more complicated, but not by much. Now, drop 2 voicing exists in part writing and is an example of open voicing. Now, open voicing is the opposite of our closed voicing that we talked about earlier. Open voicing is when all the voices take up more than an octave of space. Let's take our same C7 chord from earlier. And now, let's just take our G and we'll extend it up here. Now our voicing is extending past this octave, and that makes this an open voiced chord. Now, in order to make a voicing drop 2, we just take our full closed chord, take the second to highest note, and drop it down an octave, hence drop 2. Alright, starting back at our same closed C7. All we do is we take the second note, which would be this G, and we drop it an octave here. And that is now our drop 2 voicing. Now, this may sound very similar to an inversion, but they are fundamentally different. An inversion is determined by the actual note in the bass, while drop 2 is more focused on the actual voicing of the chord. Alright, say it with me now. Let's take our closed voice C7 chord, except we'll put the E in the bass. This is now a second inversion. Same thing happens if we were to put the G in the bass, or even the B flat. Meanwhile, if we were to put our G in the bass, you can still see that, like, even though this couldn't be called a second inversion because we have our G in the bass, it's much more concerned with the actual voicing of the chord rather than what note is in the bass. Because let's take our closed voice and we'll just put an E in the bass. This is also a third inversion. We can also voice it like this, and that's still a third inversion, even though we have a different voicing in the right hand. Inversions are simply concerned with what note is in the bass, rather than the actual voicing of the chord, as the drop voicings are. Both concepts are very similar, and while there are some overlap between the two, they aren't the same. Now that we've talked about the arranging techniques, let's break down the actual process of writing the soli. We can divide this into 4 separate parts. The first being writing the melody, embellishing the melody, hitting the target notes, and filling in the approach tones. So let's go ahead with step 1, which is to write a melody. I've gone ahead and done this already with a melody that's definitely not a top 40s pop song that's currently going viral on TikTok. It's something totally original, obviously, yeah. Now step 2 is to embellish the melody. Usually solis are derivative of the original melody but aren't quite one-to-ones, but they can be. This one isn't though. Let's take a listen. Now step 3, we're going to take all of our beats that we want emphasized and all of our strong beats, and we're going to harmonize those. And now finally, step 4, we're going to harmonize our approach tones, which are all the notes that lead up to our strong chord tones. And now, let's hear our final sax soli. And that's how you write a sax soli. Told you it was easy. If you want to hear another example, go check out my Castaways cover that I made a couple years ago. Besides that, if you enjoyed the video or you learned something, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. You know, do all the YouTube things. And I'll catch you guys later.